What's up guys, I'm BTC. We just got a brand new Archives event. In addition to all the skins and the new emotes and stuff, there was also some other pretty significant changes to the game. They've added a bunch of game modes for the Archive event itself, but also the normal competitive game modes have been changed with how they handle the time. Also, there's the new replay system, there's a bunch of nerfs and buffs, and some other changes, so I'm going to go through all of that extra stuff that was included in the patch. The first thing is that they are trying to reduce the amount of time it takes to complete a match. The first part is that they're reducing the initial setup time by an additional 5 seconds. So it's 35 seconds before, now it's going to be 30 seconds. And in addition, whenever there is extra overtime, you have time in the bank when you complete a round, for example, what ends up happening is you go through all the way of Hanamura, you get both point A and point B, and you have, let's say, 5 minutes left. And then the other team goes through Hanamura, and they capture it in, let's say, 4 minutes left. Then what ends up happening is both teams keep going, and the score goes higher and higher. You have 6v6, and then 8v8, and that sort of stuff. What they're trying to do is limit that. So now, if both teams have more than 2 minutes remaining, they will remove as much time as they can until one team only has 2 minutes remaining. So the example that they give is that Team A has 4 minutes and 37 seconds, Team B has 2 minutes and 50 seconds. They're just going to cut 50 seconds off of both teams. So the first team will end up with 3 minutes and 47 seconds, and then the second team ends up with 2 minutes. This is just for them to be able to shorten the matches so that you don't keep going again and again into these ridiculous scores. A really cool feature that they added with this patch is the ability to save and share your replays. Although you're not truly saving it, you just get to temporarily pin it because every time the game updates with a new patch, all of the old replays get wiped out. So this is pretty cool though. You click on the replay, which I don't have any right now, but then there's a pin button right here, and there's also a share button right here. And when you share it, you get a code that's similar to the workshop. Then someone else can just import the code, and then they get your copy of the gameplay, which is pretty awesome. Now, I know a lot of people are going to use this to share some cool moments and stuff, or maybe to try to get coaching. I'm going to do something different with this. Throwing is a very big problem in Overwatch. I've talked about how Blizzard needs to implement an agent system to the game, but until they do that, I'm going to show you guys what throwing looks like, what things to look for, and all that sort of stuff. So, here's how it's going to work. If you're in a match and you see someone who you think is throwing, then I want you to save the replay, you're going to get the code, and you're going to email it to me. And the email is on the screen right now. I need you to email a couple of things. 1, I need the code. 2, I need the player that you want me to watch that you believe was throwing. And 3, I need to have a screenshot of the tab menu during the game, because during the replay, you don't get to see the player ranks. This is an example from a quick play match. Obviously, yours would be from a competitive match, and I need it for 2 reasons. 1, to confirm that the match you were in was in fact competitive, and 2, I need to know what the ranks are for everyone, because someone who's throwing in Diamond is probably going to look a little similar to someone who might just be new to the game down in Bronze. So that information is very important, so you must have this screenshot. Doesn't matter at what point, it could be at the very beginning, it could be at the very end. As long as I can see all the players and their ranks, then we're good. I'm not going to be able to use every single video that you guys send me, but I will pick some of them, and I'll show you some of the things that you need to look for when trying to figure out if someone is actually throwing. Now, the hard throwers are really easy to see, where they're just jumping off the map. Soft throwing is much more difficult, because there are certain things that you need to look for, and I will show you guys what those things are. Also, with the patch, we got some new game modes. The competitive 6v6 elimination has returned, and also all of the old Archives event missions. So Uprising, Retribution, Storm Rising, you've got the story versions, the all-hero versions, and then there's a different difficulty for all of it. However, there's also something else that has been added for this Archives event. We've got the new challenge missions. Now, how these work is a little bit different. They're all on the expert difficulty, so you don't get to change that. But there are additional rules. So for example, with the Molten Core, enemies drop lava on death. And then you have Glass Cannon, where the players have reduced health, but also increased damage. And then for the Surgical Strike, this is where only critical hits will do any damage. Close quarters means that in order for the damage to register, you must be next to the enemy, so you have to be really close to them. And then Blood Moon Rising, there are no supports. You heal yourself by dealing damage. And then for the Storm Raging, it is wherever you kill an enemy, the enemies that are nearby will become enraged, which increases their potential damage and possibly their speed as well. So these are little extra challenge things, and they're all set to the expert difficulty level. So they are going to be a little bit on the, the tough side. It's not quite like it's legendary, but it does add something else that's interesting that is kind of unique to this event. There was also another pretty big change with the competitive ladder and the bans. I don't really think it's the greatest decision that they've done. We'll talk about that in just a second. Really fast, I want to go through the buffs and the nerfs that the characters had. Now, most of this stuff looks like it was the same thing that we had on the PTR and on the experimental, so I'm going to cruise through this as fast as I can. For Baptiste, the Exo Boot's charge time was reduced from 1 second down to 0.7 seconds. Also, the Regen Burst, the cooldown was reduced from 15 seconds down to 13 seconds. For Diva, the boosters, the cooldown was increased from 3 seconds up to 4 seconds. For Mei, she got several nerfs. First is the Ice Wall. The cooldown was increased from 10 seconds to 13 seconds. And also, player collision with the wall has been changed. So now you only need to break one pillar and any character can fit through. You don't have to worry about certain fat characters not being able to fit through there. Next is Orisa. She got a buff, which is her primary attack. The damage was increased from 10 up to 11 per hit. And then we have Sigma, who got a couple of changes to his ultimate. First, the ultimate cost was reduced by 10%, and the flight speed was increased by 30%. Here's a quick look at what that speed increase looks like. So you're definitely moving quite a bit faster. You definitely move a lot faster that way. Next character is Soldier 76. The Helix Rocket got a pretty significant buff. It went from an 8-second cooldown down to a 6-second cooldown, so you're able to do quite a bit more damage. And then Sombra got a buff to her primary attack. The spread was decreased by 10%. So what this means is that you can be further away and more of your attack is still going to hit. I know obviously there's still going to be fall-off damage from it, but it does mean that you'll be able to hit more stuff further away. And even when you're just close, it does mean that you're going to be able to land more criticals because everything is going to be focused more around that smaller area. So you can land more criticals, just deal more damage overall. This isn't like a flat 10% increase to her damage, but it is definitely a nice buff. Getting back to that really big competitive change, it has to do with the heroes that have been banned out of rotation. The first one is massive. Reinhardt was being used at all ranks. Bronze through GM, I think he's like the number 2 pick overall, so that is going to affect pretty much everyone. Then the second pick, Reaper, that is largely going to affect the lower bracket because Reaper's pick rate in the upper bracket had mostly dropped off in favor of other characters like McCree and Widow. But I think that this is actually going to play something into what the new comps that we're going to be having for the next week. And not having Reaper there is going to be pretty big. We'll talk about that more in a second. But the other really big stuff is Ana and Moira have been removed. 2 supports. There's only 7 supports, I think, right? And removing 2 of them? I don't know. That doesn't really seem right. I mean, look at how many DPS there are, and you're removing 2 of the support. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 supports. You remove 2 of the biggest healers in the game. Now you have Baptiste, who has been nerfed pretty substantially. You've got Mercy, who doesn't have any burst heal whatsoever. And then you have 3 off healers. The amount of healing that's going to be available for the next week is going to be substantially lower than what we've had in a very long time. Now, I've actually been saying for a while that we need more anti-heal in the game, and I still think that's true, but I don't think taking 2 of the healers out is a good idea. I don't know, there just aren't enough support characters in it. I mean, think of it this way. You already have a tough time getting people wanting to play tank and wanting to play support, right? And when you go and you say, well, not only do a lot of people not want to play support, but we're also going to remove 2 of them. So now, instead of having 7 to choose from, or even 6, you know, let's assume 6, because let's say one of them gets taken out. Now, instead of having that, you only have 5 characters. So not only do you not want to play, but we even more limited what is available. I have a feeling that the queue time for support is probably going to go up quite a bit, because, I mean, people, again, they don't want to really play it to begin with, and now you're limiting it even more. Like, you know what? I'm just going to queue for tank, or I'm just going to queue for DPS. It's not even worth it. I don't know. Again, I do think that there's too much healing in the game. I don't think banning multiple supports is a good way to deal with it, though. Now, this is going to have a pretty big effect in the upper bracket. Ana was really, really huge, very powerful for the last week or so. Moira, again, more in the lower bracket. A lot of her pick rate had dropped off in the upper bracket. I believe it was towards the bottom. I don't know if she was the lowest. I believe Baptiste was actually the lowest in the upper bracket. But Moira's pick rate in the upper had dropped off quite a bit. But anyways, so now we have the Reinhardt, we've got Reaper, Ana, and Moira have been banned. So what does that leave? Well, it's going to be one of 2 things. Either we're going to get double barrier back again, so we're going to have Orisa and Sigma, and you can expect to have a Mei thrown in there, right? So double barrier might be coming back. It's a possibility. Or we could have Dive, which is going to be the Winston and D.Va, and you're not going to have the Reaper to contest you, right? You don't have to worry about that anymore. So Dive has potential to be way, way more powerful. So you get a D.Va, a Winston, you get a Tracer in there, you have a Lucio. I mean, depending on what rank you're at, you might want to have, you know, a Baptiste or maybe a Zenyatta, right? The old school Dive was, I believe it was Lucio and Zenyatta way back in the day. And then when Mercy got her rework and she could res 4 people in like 20 seconds, Zenyatta got kicked to the side and it was Lucio, Mercy. But I mean, I think Dive is definitely going to be very popular this week. Dive or double barrier. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Removing 2 of the supports? It just doesn't seem very good. So let me know what you guys think about all these changes. Also, again, if you want to submit any of your videos for who you think might be throwing, send it to that email. Remember, you need to include the code for the video itself. You need to include who it was, and you need to include that screenshot. All 3 of those things are required. So any of those, send them over to me. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to get notified. You can get some cool gear, join my Discord server, or follow me on social media with the links down in the description below. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, and remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.